All the harmoniums are broken. Sorry, you're going to have to put up with me again. I gave class on Saturday, but I came to here. But unfortunately, you have to put up with me. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravana Chari Natira. Yamuna Tiravana Chari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana. Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Brajajana. Yamuna Tiravana Chari. Una Tiravana Chari. Yamuna Tiravana Chari. Yamuna Tiravana. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. 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 Jayam Vishnupad Paramamsa Parivajaka Shastra Śrīmad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 6, texts 11 to 13. Chapter name is Prahlad instructs his demoniac schoolmates. Katham priyaya anukampitaya Sangam rahasyam ruchiramscha mantran Surishtu tasneha sita shishunam Kalaksharanam anurakta chittaha Katham priyaya anukampitaya Sangam rahasyam ruchiramscha mantran Suritsuta sneha sita shishunam Kalaksharanam anurakta chittaha Katham priyaya anukampitaya Sangam rahasyam ruchiramscha mantran Suritsuta sneha sita shishunam Kalaksharanam anurakta chittaha. Vaishnavis. I'll read the next two verses. They're not on the board. Putran smaramsta duhitri hidaya pratrin svashrir va pitrauja dinau grihan manognaru parichadamscha vrittischa kulya pashubritya vargan tajeta koshaskrid ive hamanaha karmani lobhad avitripta kamaha aupastya jayvam bahu manyamanaha katham virajeta duranta moha. Word for word, please repeat. Katham, how? Priyayaha, of the dearmost wife. Anukampitayaha, always affectionate and compassionate. Sangam, the association. Rahasyam, solitary. Ruchiran, very pleasing and acceptable. Cha, and. Mantran, instructions. Suritsu, to the wife and children. Tat sneha sitaha, being bound by the affection. Shishunam, to the small children. Kala aksharanam, speaking in broken language. Anurakta chittaha, a person whose mind is attracted. Putran, the sons. Smaran, thinking of. Taha, them. Tuhitri, the daughters. Married and staying at the homes of their husbands. Hridaya, always situated in the core of the heart. Bratrin, the brothers. Swashriva, or the sisters. Pitaro, father and mother. Cha, and Dino, who in old age are mostly invalids. Grihan, household affairs. Manogya, very attractive. Uru, much. Parichadan, furniture. Cha, and Vrittihi, big sources of income. Industry, business. Cha, and Kulyaha, connected with the family. Pashu, of animals. Cows, elephants, and other household animals. Britya, servants and maidservants. Vargan, groups. Tejeta, can give up. Koshaha krit, the silkworm. Iva, like. Iha manaha, performing. Karmani, different activities. Lobhat, because of insatiable desires. Avitripta kamaha, whose increasing desires are not satisfied. Aupastya, pleasure from the genitals. Jaivam, and the tongue. Bahu manyamanaha, considering as very important. Katham, how. Virajyeta, is able to give up. Duranta moha, being in great illusion. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. How can a person who is most affectionate to his family, the core of his heart, being always filled with their pictures, give up their association? Specifically, a wife is always very kind and sympathetic and always pleases her husband in a solitary place. Who could give up the association of such a dear and affectionate wife? Small children talk in broken language, very pleasing to hear, and their affectionate father always thinks of their sweet words. How could he give up their association? One's elderly parents and one's sons and daughters are also very dear. A daughter is especially dear to her father, and while living at her husband's house, she is always in his mind. Who could give up that association? Aside from this, in household affairs, there are many decorated items of household furniture, and there are also animals and servants. Who could give up such comforts? The attached householder is like a silkworm which weaves a cocoon in which it becomes imprisoned, unable to get out. Simply for the satisfaction of two important senses, the genitals and the tongue, one is bound by material conditions. How can one escape? Purport. In household affairs, the first attraction is the beautiful and pleasing wife, which increases household attraction more and more. One enjoys his wife with two prominent sense organs, namely the tongue and the genitals. The wife speaks very sweetly. This is certainly an attraction. Then she prepares very palatable foods to satisfy the tongue. And when the tongue is satisfied, one gains strength in the other sense organs, especially the genitals. Thus, the wife gives pleasure in sexual intercourse. Household life means sex life. Yan maitunadi grihamedi sukham hitucham. This is encouraged by the tongue. Then there are children. A baby gives pleasure by speaking sweet words in broken language. And when the sons and daughters are grown up, one becomes involved in their education and marriage. Then there are one's own father and mother to be taken care of. And one also becomes concerned with the social atmosphere and with pleasing his brothers and sisters. A man becomes increasingly entangled in household affairs, so much so that leaving them becomes almost impossible. Thus the household becomes griham andakupam, a dark well into which the man has fallen. For such a man to get out is extremely difficult unless he is helped by a strong person, the spiritual master, who helps the fallen person with the strong rope of spiritual instructions. A fallen person should take advantage of this rope, and then the spiritual master, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, will take him out of the dark well. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So what do the women think about this verse? Ladies, your thoughts on this verse and purport? It's a tough one to speak on. I might make many enemies. No. So here Prahlad Maharaj is further describing the entanglement of the man, right? So, and here it's being explained that how family life is very entangling. The last few verses, Prahlad Maharaj was speaking about how the human form of life is very short. The duration of the human form of life is very short. The human form of life in itself is very rare. It is durlabha, it is rarely achieved. And it's because it's rarely achieved, it should be utilized very wisely. So if something achieves something very rare, generally people will protect it, cherish it, and put it to good use. Right? So if you have got an inheritance, then a person will, hopefully use it wisely and protect it. So, because a large inheritance is a very rare thing, and then one can put it to good use and live a comfortable life. So in the same way, the human form of life is very rarely achieved. Durlabha manasa, janam. So we are revolving in the 8.4 million species of life, which I spoke about the other day. And after a very long period of time, one fortunately gets a human form of life. And because the human form of life, the consciousness is very evolved, one can take advantage of it and go back to Godhead. Because that is the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to go back to Godhead. It's to relieve oneself from the suffering of birth, death, old age and disease. So this human form of life, not human, a material body is actually an imprisonment. And not only the material body, but the entire material world. And this body is like compared to a prison suit. If you're put in prison, you're given certain clothes, maybe orange clothes or different clothes. So this body is a suit for which signifies our imprisonment in this world. And if you're in the jail, the goal is to come out of the jail. It's not to stay there. It's not to make the jail comfortable. It's not to go from a lower class prison cell to a higher class. So there's a D grade prison cell, and then there's the A grade, in which there's higher comforts. There might be an AC there, a bed. You get nice food. You might get a computer. You can socialize more with others. But that's not the goal, to go from one prison cell to a different. You're still locked up. So in the human form of life is a higher grade of prison cell, in which there's more opportunities afforded to get out of the prison cell. And that's the purpose of life, which is to develop our love for Krishna and to perfect this human form of life. Jivera Swarupoye Krishnera Nityadas. We are Krishna's eternal servant, meant to render service to Krishna all the time, 24/7, non-stop, without any motivation. Right? As it's mentioned in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto. Pure devotional service is that which is rendered favorably, without motivation and without cessation. But we have forgotten that, and we are stuck in this life. And we are always trying to gratify our senses, because that is our conditioned nature, to try to seek happiness independent of God, independent of Krishna. So we are always trying to, that is our disease state. Our natural state is to serve Krishna, and our disease state is to gratify ourselves and make ourselves the center of the world. We all have that propensity, and sometimes we have to catch ourselves doing that. Self-aggrandizement. I definitely have it. So we have this disease propensity of trying to be the center and lord of everything. And we go through life trying to seek happiness. And one of the most intense ways of doing that, one of the most intense and absorbing ways, is being in a relationship or household life. So as we grow up, when we are a boy or girl, before we hit puberty, the opposite sex is not so much attractive. The hormones haven't kicked in. For men, the testosterone hasn't kicked in. For ladies, the estrogen and progesterone hasn't kicked in yet. And when those hormones, they kick in by nature's arrangement, suddenly the opposite gender becomes attractive. And then one tries to, and this is please the other gender in order to associate with them. And this is nature's arrangement, this is Krishna's arrangement, because the material world is a shadow, a chaya of the spiritual world. These things are there also. And this is there also to facilitate our entanglement or liberation, depending on how we engage with it. So so man wants to be with woman, and woman wants to be with man. That is going on since time immemorial. It's gone on since time immemorial. It will go on. It will always go on. Nothing will change. This is how things are. So here Prahlad Maharaj is explaining that after going through childhood, boyhood, and then in youth, how one's life is wasted in childhood by playing various games, in youth, studying, and then one wants to be with the opposite gender. And when one gets involved, they get more and more entangled. The example given here is of a silkworm, which weaves a cocoon. So you've seen a silkworm, right? It generates silk, it makes cocoons, and sometimes it gets stuck inside. Its own cocoon it binds it. So in the same, the household life is compared to that, a silkworm which weaves a cocoon around it. So much so that they get totally absorbed in that cocoon. And here that is very nicely being explained. And I'm sure we all can relate to this. It's gone in so much depth and with so much precision and clarity it's described. And here specifically it's mentioned a man. A man is entangled by the wife. So that's why I was asking, how do the women feel about that? So we are specifically it's mentioned a man because a man has to take the lead in a relationship. So it's not that men and women are equal. So today's modern society has fooled everyone in thinking that men and women are equal. That whatever men do, women can also do. But we are totally polar opposites. Men and women are polar opposites. So the man is masculine and the woman is feminine. So the masculine energy is focused, structured, disciplined. It's not that women can't do these things. Women can certainly do these things. And more rational, more logical. Whereas the feminine energy is more flowing, creative, nurturing. So men and women have different strengths, and both can do the other thing, but it is unnatural for them to always be in the opposite energy. So modern society has fooled people in thinking that men and women are equal. And actually men have done this so they can exploit the women, as Prabhupada explains. Many times the women would get upset with Prabhupada when he would say, the wife should be chaste and faithful and serve the husband. And then the women would get upset, and the reporters, you could see, they would ask these questions. What do you mean? This is like slavery, or it's all equal? And Prabhupada used to tell them, no, it's not like that. So by nature, women the feminine energy submits. We also see the jiva is feminine energy, right? Krishna is the supreme male. And the jiva is the feminine. So the jiva submits and serves the Lord, who is the supreme masculine. So we are meant for service. And the same dynamics also apply in a relationship. And the man also serves the woman by providing, especially spiritual leadership, and also providing for the comforts and the needs of the family. That's the man's duty. Of course, today's society is all upside down. Women also have to work just to make things work. But these are the basic dynamics. And because with the feminine energy, the emotions are strong, it is hard to, one has to be led because of the hormones, estrogen and progesterone. It is the emotions are always changing from one week to the other, right? Depending on the cycle. So the emotions are always changing, and therefore, that's where a man has to provide that spiritual leadership and direction in a family. Of course, in Kali Yuga, the men are useless. The men have no backbone in Kali Yuga. So, in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's that section where Arjuna talks about the destruction of dynasty and how all men will be killed. And there Prabhupada says, trying to remember, Varna Shankara. Sorry, my mind's gone blank. But the point is, the man has to take the lead, and that's why here it's talking about how the man is getting entangled. So that's the context I'm speaking about. So if the man is not taking the lead, then what hope is there for the household to progress spiritually? So that's why marriage is very important in society. I was saying the other day, in today's society, marriage also doesn't take place. People just prefer to live in relationships, and they keep changing relationships just for the satisfaction of their senses. Or today you're pleasing me, tomorrow you're not pleasing me, I will leave you. So, unfortunately, separation and divorce is very common. People don't fulfill their vows, don't stick to their vows. But that's the sad state of affairs of Kali Yuga. So people don't even in Kali Yuga in the West, people don't even want to marry, just want to live in relationships. And they've been living for 8-9 years, and you ask them, maybe you should get married. They say, no, I'm still not sure about the other person. And they're saying, what's the point of getting married anyway? It's just a big expense. Because they have no higher vision that the goal of life is to go back to Godhead. So that's where the men in Kali Yuga are more or less, most men are useless. So that's why the women are seem to be more powerful. Though it is said that the woman is the fair sex, the weaker sex. But in Kali Yuga, because the men are so useless, like, worms, like pathetic worms, so they have no backbone. They can't control their senses. They don't practice celibacy, and therefore they can't keep it together themselves. What to speak of, taking a family forward. So here the Grihayamedi person is being described, one who enters household life simply to satisfy one's senses. That is being described in great detail. And in Varnashram, the goal of life was in traditional Varnashram, the goal of life was to gradually become renounced. There's the 4 ashrams. There's the Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas ashrams. So a man would be trained in the Brahmachari ashram, where they would learn celibacy, learn to control their seed, not waste it. And with that comes strength, determination, resolve, youthfulness. That ojas comes in the person because they have controlled their senses. And they learn how to sacrifice. I was speaking about this. They learn the principle of sacrifice, like in the brahmachari ashram. The brahmacharis go out on book distribution, whatever Lakshmi they collect, or they're going to crossways, whatever Lakshmi they collect, they give it to the temple. So they're not keeping anything for themselves. So they learn the principle of sacrifice and submission to higher authority, to the guru, to the temple authorities, and ultimately to Krishna. So they learn these principles. And then from there, the whole idea is you take this, the man has to take this into the next phase of life, which most men will go, is the Grihastha ashram. So in that ashram, they have to continue those same principles. And so that's why the brahmachari ashram is for the attached and the non-attached. It is the training ground. And then progressively, the idea was in traditional varnashram, when one approaches 50 or 60, then one begins to wind down. By then the kids have grown up. The kids have grown up and they're standing on their 2 feet. The parents have done their responsibility, and then they start to travel to the dham, various places, and in that way absorb their mind in Krishna's service. Because as mentioned here, household life is very intense and absorbing. One is concerned so much with economic affairs, right? So there's so much concern to make money, and as explained here in great detail, how a person becomes attached to their affectionate wife. And here also nice principles of Grihastha life are explained, how the wife should be affectionate and speak with sweet words, and also cook nice food. Actually, that's what a man wants. If you speak with any man, they'll tell you these things. In a woman, I'm looking for someone who can speak nicely, sweet words, who's not nagging all the time. Someone who's just not picking up a fight all the time. I come home after work, after battling it out there, and I want to come home and just, be peaceful and relax. This is my board. And they come home and a wife is nagging. It's very, a man doesn't like it. So if you want good Grihastha life, there's some nice principles here. A woman speaks with affectionate words. The way to a man's heart is through the belly, is the saying. So by cooking nice food, and then what else is mentioned here? By being attractive, dressing nicely, and being affectionate and loving. So by doing this, in today's society, the women think this is, in feminism, the women think that this is not a good position to be in. I'm taking a subservient role. But what they don't realize is by doing that, they control the man. They're totally able to control the man. So if someone is being so sweet, affectionate, cooking nicely, and taking care of the household in a nurturing way, in that way the man is actually under their control. So this is some nice principles of household life are being described, and that's how it should be. But in today's day and age, feminism is huge, and a lot of women struggle with this, especially in the West, when they come to Krishna consciousness. When they read these verses and Prabhupada's books, it's a big shock for them, and they revolt. And here also it's explained that how then a wife pleases a husband in a solitary place. There's physical intimacy. And then there's kids. and then how a man is attracted by the sweet words of his children, and how they're so absorbed in that. And children speak in broken language, which is generally very pleasing to hear, right? Everyone, when a child speaks in broken language, it captivates everyone's attention. And then in household life, one gets so entangled in this way that they're just basically caught up in all this, and then there's one's parents, maybe they're having health problems, or there's some dramas going on there, or just, even if they're in good shape, it's just one is absorbed in thoughts of taking care of them. And then there's grandchildren, and so on and so forth. In this way, one's entire life, human form of life, is wasted. Speaking about a Griya Medi, I'm not talking about Grihasthas, I'm not speaking about you. You all are nice devotees. Don't throw lemons at me. So, but with Grihasthas, this is the life of a Griya Medi being described. And as Prahlad Maharaj explains further on, Yan Maitunadi Griya Medi Sukham Itucham Kanduya Nena Karayor Iva Dukkha Dukkham Tripyanti Neha Kripana Bahu Dukkha Bhaja Kanduti Van Manasi Jam Vishaheta Dhira. That, paraphrasing, he explains that Griya Medis, so-called Grihasthas who have no spiritual knowledge, they think that household life is the source of the greatest happiness. So Prahlad Maharaj is explaining, those who lack any spiritual vision, for them household life is the be-all and the end-all. That's their, once they're in it, they're stuck. It's Griya Anda Kupam. They're totally stuck in it because they don't know anything higher, and because they don't know anything higher, this is what they will cling on to. Because they're not dhira, they're not sober, and then there's no hope for them. So we need the help of a guru, of shastra, of devotees, who in this verse is explained like the rope which has been thrown in the well. And it's only the mercy of the guru and Vaishnavas that can pull us out of this entanglement. So now for devotees, household life is also very important, and so it should be, because most men will want to marry. And household life is very important because otherwise it leads to adultery and debauchery in society. If it's not there, then it's just chaos, which we see in the modern world. It's total chaos. So household life is important, and for devotees it's also important, in which one can progressively make advancement through devotional service. So when both are devotees, it's a nice situation, and the man and the woman, they can complement each other, and then it is a very nice arrangement. That very thing which is the source of entanglement now becomes a source of liberation. So the very household life which is entangling, and externally it might appear the same to a non-devotee. Here's a devotee in a family with kids, and here I am with a family, and what's the difference? But there's a big difference, because their consciousness of a devotee is fixed on Krishna. So because the consciousness of a devotee is fixed on Krishna, then that very household life is liberating. So Prabhupada in the Bhagavad Gita, he talks about, I think in chapter 13, some knowledge, in which it talks about something along the lines of being free from the entanglement of household life. Sorry. So there it mentions that in household life, there needs to be hearing and chanting. So primarily there's deity worship. Deity worship is especially important for householders. It's important for everyone, but especially for householders, because in our conditioned stage we are so much absorbed in the body. We have such a strong identity with the body. So with deity worship, that when we worship the form of the Lord, it gradually breaks our attachment to this body, and then Krishna becomes the center. So in householder life, deity worship is very important. Especially if you're living far from the temple. If you're near the temple, then you have the temple deities, if you can get service. These days it's hard to get service because there's such a big congregation. So then a lot of devotees have deities in their home, and they make the deity the center piece of their home. So there then offering of prasadam, kirtan, having some katha, and then that is proper householder life, in which there is, Prabhupada said, every day read something together as a couple, have some kirtan, offer an arti, and that way Krishna is the center. And then whatever time is there, then one can do some preaching, if one has some time, after looking after one's kids. And if it's done in that way, then it's not so entangling, where Krishna is the centerpiece. So we can see that there's many examples in our congregation of senior grihasthas, successful senior grihasthas, who are exemplifying this without taking any names. So you can see how they're doing deity worship at home, doing service in the temple, doing some preaching, and setting an example for others to follow. So there's so many bhakti vrikshas like that, where you can see this example in action. And that is the success of the grihastha ashram. And if it's like that, then there's no need to quit it. And by doing that, then the binding forces are not as strong as they otherwise would be. We even see in the Shastra, even the Supreme Lord himself sets this example. So Krishna married thousands of queens in Dwarka, and he would set an example of householder life. So when Narad Muni wanted to know what Krishna was doing, visiting different palaces, and there he would see Krishna doing different activities. So one palace he went, the Lord was up early in the morning. He gave up the comfort of his bed and his beautiful. He got up and he was doing meditation. He was meditating on himself. So we can see how even Krishna, he exemplifies that householder life. And we can even see in the lives of the various acharyas, like Bhaktivedanta Thakur. Bhaktivedanta Thakur was a grihastha, but he did so much as a grihastha. He had so many children. He was a judge, and he wrote all these books. And in Krishna consciousness, most devotees will be grihasthas, right? It's very brahmacharis and sannyasis are the minority. And this movement will be carried on and spread mainly by the grihasthas. So this is a Sankirtan movement, the congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, right? So this is a congregational movement, and when all the grihasthas, they do their little bit, it makes a big difference. And the rest of the world also looks at us. The rest of the world is also looking at us. Most people cannot relate to brahmacharis and sannyasis. So in the preaching, most people actually look up to grihasthas. They want to see what's your household life like? Is it together? And then they are also inspired by the example, by seeing how you're practicing consciousness while being in the Grihastha ashram, because they are Griha Medis. So they need to see an example, and when they see an example of a householder who's practicing very nicely, then that is very inspiring for them, and then they also progress that way. So householder, this is very important, good householder life. This is just some thoughts I shared. Do you have any questions or comments? Sorry if I offended anyone. And yeah, any corrections, please point out. Yeah.
Was he able to give this information to his friends so detailed actually?
How was he able to preach to them?
Very detailed, right? Like for example, when he has that, sometimes it's very hard to foresee that what exactly will happen.
Yeah.
Or what will happen in this. But still, if you see here, Prabhupada was giving very detailed explanation of how a person goes through and how he falls into this well.
Yeah.
How was he able to give all this information?
Okay, so my understanding is, so he was in school with these kids, and whenever there was a break, when Sanda and Amarka, they would go away in the recess or something, and when he was with the kids in private, with his friends in private, he would speak about this, and he gave them these instructions. Is this what you were asking, or more?
The type of knowledge what does it at a young age, 5 years old boy,
Yeah.
could visualize what a Grihastha life.
Yes.
So
How was he able to do it? Yeah, because Prahlad Maharaj is a pure devotee. He's not an extraordinary soul. Is he one of the 12 Mahajans? Yeah, so he's a Mahajan, right? Number one, he's a Mahajan, so he's self-realized. And he's self-realized from the womb. He heard the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam in the womb, right? And by hearing, he realized. So, real intelligence, someone who, first-class intelligence is understands by hearing. Of course, Prahlad Maharaj is already self-realized. He's a pure devotee. He heard Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. He understood everything. He understood the conclusion. And because of his pure bhakti, he was able to speak so highly. Because he totally understood. At a young age of 5 years, he knew the conclusions of the Shastras. And he also understood the entanglement of household life without going through it himself. I mean, he's talking in so much detail. This is, even we don't realize it. We are already in it, right? And here Prahlad Maharaj is not even in it. He's speaking from outside. So that's by hearing and maybe by watching also, and by watching all those realizations, even, who am I to say anything about Prahlad Maharaj? But he's a Mahajan, and he knows that his friends will eventually go in house of life. So he's instructing them already, way in advance, to, like the Prachetas, was it Narad Muni? Yeah, who spoke, made them all brahmacharis. So he was trying to save them from the entanglement by giving them those instructions. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. So yeah, don't get discouraged by this verse. There is hope. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the nice class. Prabhuji, you mentioned how the society is degraded nowadays, that girls and boys, they don't get married, they just keep a relationship. But I've heard in Prabhupada's lectures and his books, he says that Kali Yuga is the best age to go back home, back to Godhead. So what does Harinam Sankirtan do? Does it lift us lift them up because there's so many negative aspects and negative things. What does Harinam Sankirtan do?
Okay, so what does Harinam Sankirtan do? Harinam Sankirtan gives us the highest Krishna Prem. So it gives the highest to the lowest. In Kali Yuga is the most fallen age, in which we don't have any qualification to go back to God, to even understand who we are, what to speak of understanding Krishna. We have no qualifications, we are totally unqualified, we have bad habits, our senses are uncontrolled. So the Harinam takes us from the mode of ignorance all the way to pure goodness. And all the miseries that come in Kali Yuga are an impetus to push us further. So in Kali Yuga there's so many problems, right? There's problems in just working, relationships, health, this and that. So my spiritual master, he gave me this book to read. Krishna Protects His Devotees, recently. So I read that book, and there it talks about the struggle of the Ukrainian devotees, how they are. Niranjan Maharaj, Radhanath Swami, Devamrit Swami. It's some lectures and it's been transcribed, and the title of the book is Krishna Protects His Devotees. So how their struggles actually bring them closer to Krishna. Has the potential to bring them closer if the devotees take advantage of it. So Kali Yuga has a lot of problems, but Harinam Sankirtan, if we take shelter of the holy name, and then it will actually bring us closer to Krishna. And that's why this is the golden age. Because the holy name is there, the devotees are there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Anything else? Hope I haven't made many enemies amongst the Matajis in the online audience as well.
Yes, as they're just discussing, this was in Satya Yuga, and the process was to go to the forest and meditate. And this day and age we have the process of Harinam Sankirtan that everyone can take part in, and I've heard Prabhupada say that anyone can take part in Harinam Sankirtan, even a dog can take part in it. And we had this wonderful experience in Mayapur with this small Harinam party. We're going around the campus there chanting, and one little dog followed us along, and the kid on the end was going, Hare Krishna, like that. And the dog thought, oh, I can do that too. So it was going, Arr! So the dog was trying to chant as well. So anyway, the dog was involved with it. So anyone can take part in the process of Harinam Sankirtan, which is very wonderful. And
that's right. Lord Chaitanya, when he was traveling through the Jharkhand forest, he was singing the holy names, and all the animals were also taking part. They were in ecstasy. The animals experience love of God. They were dancing the tigers were dancing. The animals usually who don't get along with each other, they all were singing in their own way, Harinam Sankirtan together. So we can see the power of the holy names, extraordinary power. And there's so many other examples. Janananda Maharaj has written a book, I believe, Animals in Krishna Consciousness, something like that, where there's examples of how some animals have partaken in bhakti. There's also that dog, right, Janardhan? I've seen him on Harinam. He wears a kanthi mala, and he was having dinner at Crossroads the other day, and there he came. This is the guy is a bhakta, You can see. He has tilak on. Mataji has put tilak on him. He's wearing neck beads, and he goes on Harinam, goes on book distribution. He's there while book distribution is going on, so in Krishna consciousness.
one other point, so is that right, in Satya Yuga you had to sort of give up family life and go to the forest and meditate, so that's why they're saying you have to give up family life, and I think, yeah. Anyway, so the main point is the entanglement of family life makes it very difficult, and I thought of one interesting example of that, like sometimes devotees think, oh, I have to support the family, so they start a vegetarian restaurant. And
What's that?
sometimes devotees,
Yeah.
they have to support their family, they have to make money, so they think a good way to do it will be to have a vegetarian restaurant. And sometimes you go to these Indian restaurants and you see they're actually selling some other things, and saying, "Oh, you're a Hindu," and asking, "How come you're selling this meat product as well?"
What's the question, Prabhu?
So he was saying how that he, it's very hard to actually support yourself in a Krishna conscious way. Like sometimes the vegetarian restaurants, they find they have to start selling meat as well because they can't make enough money, and they have to support their families. They're so entangled with family life, that they can't get out of it, so they wind up having to sell these meat products as well. And whereas if it's a brahmachari and that project's not working, you say, "Oh, that's not working, we're not making enough money." So just...
So what's the question, Prabhuji?
Oh, just a comment, about the entanglement of family life.
Yeah, so
makes it very
devotee
difficult.
has Krishna in the center, and they're focused, then they won't make these mistakes. Yeah. A devotee won't compromise on their principles to make a livelihood. All right, thank you very much. Grantraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai.